Welcome to Let's Talk About It with Sons and Daughters. I am your host, Arden, and today I'm actually joined with my brother, Alec, and my beautiful wife, Christian. And we are doing kind of a fun topic today. We're talking about navigating conflict. But before we talk about navigating conflict, let's just talk about navigating environment. Currently, we are in our house because we are on lockdown. And so we are just owning the natural feel with the natural mics.
Thankfully, we were able to get the sign, though.
Yeah, the sign
before
was here.
Full lockdown happened.
That's really all we needed. And there is a dog as well somewhere. And so if you hear barking in the background, that's the dog. But
special appearance, yes.
Yes, of course. But as always with our episodes, I always love to start with something. There's the barking. I always love to start with something fun. And so I want to ask you guys, in kind of navigating conflict fashion, if you guys had to be navigating conflict with anyone from the TV show The Office, who would you do it between Michael, Dwight, or Kelly?
Christian?
Okay. I am not actually an avid Office watcher.
Oh my God.
But
you never told me this.
You know that. Based on what I know of those three characters, Michael, I feel like whatever opinion he thinks, that's what he's going with. There's no really breaking through. Dwight, I don't even know if I know where his mind is. And Kelly, it's a little bit more rational, but as a female, I think I could speak her language. I would go with Kelly.
That means you speak crazy.
I can do it.
That is, okay, interesting question. I totally agree with you. Michael would just go with whatever he thinks is like his opinion. And then actually I think Kelly would probably only go with what pop culture is. Mm-hmm. So I would actually have to say, even though Dwight sometimes, he might kill me or he might set the building on fire, I think deep down he's actually a real rational man. Yeah. So I would actually probably try to talk something through, Dwight deep down in there. Yeah, for sure.
I think you could navigate and kind of negotiate with him. I mean, him and Jim gets on good terms. So
yeah, exactly. There's some really powerful moments between him and Jim. Yeah.
I think that would work. Okay, next question is, speaking of conflict, people get in conflict over unpopular opinions all the time. Mm-hmm. So I have a couple unpopular opinions, and I would just love to hear what your guys' stance are on them, and if you agree about them, and how would you navigate conflict if you ran into someone that disagrees with you. And so the first thing is nuts should never be in any kind of dessert, ever. Whoever puts nuts into desserts, they're crazy. Right?
I mean, they're great people. They just need to grasp the concept of chocolate is great without nuts. It doesn't need anything.
They're just nuts. Those people who think that nuts belong in desserts, no. The only thing that I've ever found that it works is pumpkin pecan ice cream. That is actually pretty good, but that's only because, I don't know.
I do love anything pumpkin.
Pumpkin pecan ice cream is just amazing.
Unpopular opinion.
Yes.
In the South, it's called pecan instead of pecan.
It's pecan.
Okay.
Pecan pie.
Pecan.
Leave a comment what you think.
Next question is, avocados are not that great.
That is a lie from the pit of hell.
Okay. There we go.
And if you notice what I did there, the pit.
The pit.
The pits of hell. Yes. All right. No, just moving on. I'm pretty sure that Christian agrees with that, right?
Yeah.
That summed it up.
Sure.
Fantastic. Okay. Star Wars should have stopped after 3 films.
Okay, you know what? I could actually see why some people think that. I would say I love in the prequels, the 3 films before A New Hope, I'd have to say that I love the lightsaber battles in them. I feel like the lightsaber battles weren't really all that in the first original 3s, and so I was more into it as a kid for the lightsaber battles. But then I don't know, they actually kind of went downhill again. Episode 7, lightsaber battle wasn't that good. And 8 and 9, they tried to bring it back, but there's other things they tried to bring back too that kind of caused too many problems in the universe of Star Wars. I don't know.
That's deep. That's deep.
You.
All I would say is if we stopped at 3, we would have never gotten Baby Yoda. I don't want to live in a world without Baby Yoda.
No, that's actually not true, because Baby Yoda technically lives right within 1, 2, and 3, right?
You never see him though.
4, 5, and 6.
I have to see.
Yeah, 4, 5, 6.
Okay, you guys are confusing me
Have
with
to
this
see it.
conversation, I'll be honest with you.
You know what?
Long live Baby Yoda. Let's just keep it at that.
You know what? I agree.
Okay.
Long live Baby Yoda.
All right. Awesome. Well, let's talk about conflict. So let's kind of get right into this. And the way that we're actually doing this episode is we actually asked a bunch of people for questions around navigating conflict. And so we are just going to be reading off these questions, and then we're going to be having conversations around them and kind of going from different questions and kind of going from there. And so we wanted just to kind of do something that was directly speaking to y'all. So the first question is, how do you handle conflict well? We'll just go right, like kind of broad question on it.
Alec, I think you.
No, please.
Oh. Okay.
Well, and this is the thing is you've got to understand is that handling conflict well is a very broad thing.
Yeah, okay. So are we talking about handling conflict well within like relationships, or are we talking about handling conflict well within
Let's start with relationships. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
I think one thing that I've learned is I always thought conflict was this negative thing, and it's always had this negative connotation. I assumed conflict is fighting, conflict is disagreeing. If you had conflict, then it's not a healthy relationship, but rather, I think if we don't lean into conflict, then we'll never embrace it well. You kind of have to go into seeing that it's a iron sharpening iron, it's a tension. There is not going to be a single person on this earth that you agree with on everything forever. I mean, it's just inevitable to have differences, different opinions, and that doesn't have to be a bad thing. I think conflict, I've just learned in our marriage, there are things that you have to discuss. And in order to do conflict well, I think the number one thing is seeking to understand before you're understood, hearing them out and having the right heart to whoever you're in a relationship with. If I could just put a pin on, the overlayer, that's where I would start.
Yeah, that's good.
That's really good. Yeah, and I think, as Christian says, is knowing like the other person and actually doing out of relationship. Because too many times do we get in conflict with people and we do not know anything about them. And so we do not understand why they operate or why they think the way that they do. Because when you actually know, like, hey, I know this person's history, I know what they've gone through, I know what they've struggled through, you have a lot more grace for that person. So when you see them kind of act out in a certain way, you don't, or like respond to conflict in a certain way, you don't just see it as like all of these negative intentions and all this stuff. Is like, no, you actually like, you're like, okay, I understand why you're coming from this, and I truly love you and appreciate, so I'm going to navigate it this way.
One other thing I would add is conflict is a tool that you're meant to have in relationships, because if there is something that's actually going on in my life that I've either turned a blind cheek to, or I just don't want to embrace, I would want the people closest to me that do know me, like you're saying, to be the ones to call it out, to bring me to a higher level, because one, I know they're doing it to help me. Two, they have the understanding and the closeness and proximity to me to walk it out and see that I get better. If I'm just embracing conflict with people on Facebook or Instagram, they don't have that same heartbeat. It's dangerous just, it's very dangerous. It's just opinions at that point. Yeah. But, I've actually had this where I've had friends call things out of me and I've loved them more for it. I've had friends not call things out of me and just walk away. And I would much prefer, in the moment, I wouldn't want to go into that conflict, but in hindsight, I'm so thankful for people that have called things out of me. Arden, I guess you fit into that list. But conflict is for relationships. It's not something we shy away from. That's where we go into it, because we need it in that protected space. Mm-hmm.
All right, so moving on, next question I want to ask you guys is, I wanted to ask, how do we avoid, so as we're trying to, navigate conflict well, how do we avoid offenses to come into our heart? Because there's a lot of times you can navigate a conflict and then kind of sweep things under the rug, and that offense continues to keep building and building. So how do we navigate that well, where we don't allow offenses come into our heart?
So we don't allow offenses to come to our heart. So saying this is a situation that somebody, like something's happened, and now you need to handle this conflict, but you may already be offended, or you're saying like, how do we make sure that we just guard ourselves from not becoming offended? Yeah. Okay. Well, actually, because of the coronavirus, I technically wasn't even supposed to be on this episode. I think you guys were supposed to have someone like Justin Bieber or something like that. But thankfully, and he's really good at saying sorry. and handling situations. He wrote a song about it. But
this is not a sponsored podcast.
no, it's not. Thank you, Justin, by the way. Actually, in the past, a lot of people don't know this about me. I used to be a manager for Apple, and so I had to deal with a lot of conflict, a lot of customers coming in who were just very upset. They were very offended at Apple, and they were offended at Apple because something's not working, right? Or they're just an older person who doesn't understand technology, and so that not understanding technology, it makes them so frustrated that they're just upset, or there's just so many different people come in and they were so upset, and you had to handle this conflict the right way, otherwise you would lose a customer. And so I could definitely share even just some stuff that we would use as managers within the Apple store. Whenever we had someone that would come in, I would actually teach the store how to handle people appropriately. Now, conflict is something that I'm definitely not saying I'm a master at. I feel like it's something I love, handling conflict, because I feel like you constantly have to relearn it. But one thing that we would do is actually, if you remember, kind of like this 3-point system of like 3 A's. So call them the actually 3 A's. So like I said, you don't want to get offended, right? You don't want to get offended, but you have to remember that this person is also, if they're having a conflict towards you, that means that they're already offended, that they need to be heard. So whenever someone comes into the Apple store, and whenever they were upset, I would first acknowledge, align, and then assure. And so I'll just break those down really quick. So basically, whenever a customer would come in and they're super upset, like maybe their phone's not working, and so you would acknowledge the issue. You would actually acknowledge what's going on within that issue. You would acknowledge what is the conflict at hand. Then you would align with them. So what that means is you would actually share a time in your life that maybe you were frustrated about something that was very similar. Like maybe you share a time that maybe your phone wasn't working, and like how frustrating that must have been. So you totally understand what that looked like, or what that feels like. And then you assure them that you want to find the right solution. Because a lot of times whenever people are offended with you, a lot of times they really feel like they're not being heard. They have this point of view. They have this idea, and it's built up in their mind, and it's their thought process, and that thought process just needs to come out. It needs to be heard. And so I feel like a lot of times people, they don't really have like malicious intent. I don't know, like really quick, I'll just give you a quick example of that. So Arden, if you came into the store and if you were upset because your phone broke, I'd be like, oh my gosh, so I would acknowledge it. I'd be like, oh wow, it looks like your screen is broken and nobody can help you get that screen fixed in a while. And then maybe I would just acknowledge the issue, and the issue is that you're frustrated because you can't do your work on it, and be like, I know the one time I was on vacation and I couldn't do work on my phone, and that was the most frustrating thing ever. And then you assure that you can get to the right solution. Be like, hey, you know what? I don't have a genius available right now, but I need to get this fixed for you. I want to find a solution like this for you. Let's go right ahead. Let's figure out what we can do to get this fixed. Mm-hmm. So just by me saying that, it's going to bring you down. It's going to make you feel like someone's on your side. And I think in conflict, if you can just be heard and feel like someone's on your side, then that offense is really just not really going to have the opportunity to grow.
Yeah, that's massive, because I think the hearing makes sure that you hear the other person and that they feel heard. Because like you said, too many times do we get in conflict and it's just people yelling at each other or arguing with each other, getting mad at each other, and neither person is hearing the other person's point. And actually, I remember I actually just went through a book, and it's a book called Never Split the Difference, and he talked so much around negotiating. Mm-hmm. And a big part of negotiating was making sure that the other side always felt heard. And he said a lot of people think, like, if I make the other side feel heard, then they think they're like, oh, they're validated in this opinion. And he was like, no, that's the beginning steps of breaking down the argument or breaking down the negotiation and getting it to your side when he was negotiating with hostages. Yeah, people that would take, not hostages, but people who would take people hostage. The hostages as well. Kidnappers. There we go. Awesome. All right. Well, what do you do, though, if someone does get offended? So how do you navigate that?
I think there is, with that aim to understand and that aim to kind of appease at first, I think you need to have the emotional intelligence to understand when it is time to address the issue, when it is time to correct, and when it's actually time to comfort at first. because whether it's a parenting role, a relationship role, friendship, coworker, anything under that narrative, there is always, like Alex said, the time to address, because if you're offended or you're angry or you're just wildly upset, you are no longer hearing from a coherent level. They actually say that when your emotions take over to a certain point, that you stop hearing anything and you're only replaying the narrative in your mind. So sometimes you have to go into it of, I'm going to bring walls down until before we actually get into the meat of what needs to be discussed. And so I think if anyone's offended or angry, you just go into, like we've all kind of been saying, hear them out and build the relationship before you build out the conflict.
Yeah, and don't come, like, if someone's offended with you, please do not come with this, like, oh, I'm just going to hear you out so I can get over this, or so this can get past. Like, genuinely come, because I've had it times where I remember, like, 2 years ago, I was very offended in a situation, and I just kept trying to do the bare minimum to get past the situation, and it continued just to suppress the offense that was in my heart, and the offense that was in the other people's hearts, and then it would just continue to keep, building up again. And so I think that's super important. And what Christian said about the emotions is actually when you, let's say if you are someone who's navigating offense, when you are bringing up, like, having conversations or rethinking about the offense, it causes the same amount of emotions that you had to experience when you first went through the trauma or first went through the betrayal. And so you have to relive that every single time. So that's why offense is something that is so important that we do not have in our heart.
Yeah, and I think one thing going into further conversations, dealing with someone that's offended or just keeping our hearts from offense in general, we have to get rid of the narrative of this is my side of the story and this is someone else's. No one wins when we have that narrative, and it's not, I'm going to, like Arden said, prove my point so that my side is seen because I am right. You very well could be right, but if you're opposing each other, then you're not coming together, and the whole point of conflict is to embrace unity. And
that's actually one of the reasons why we did do our Fierce Unity course. And if you guys haven't been able to go through that, it's because you have to become an ambassador to be able to go through that. And so we'd encourage you, if you guys want to become an ambassador to lead people around you, please make sure you just sign up. Just go to sonsanddaughters.tv and you're able to sign up. But then you're able to go through the Fierce Unity course where we talk about it, because unity amongst the body of Christ is one of the most important things. And in order for us to do that, we have to navigate conflict well. Alec, did you have anything that you want to say? No? All right, we'll move into the next question. So how do you deal with someone that is very manipulative and it's an unhealthy relationship? So someone that is very much trying to get their way, and maybe they're just, they're making you feel bad every single chance that they get. They're kind of shifting the opinions over to, hey, it's your fault. How do you guys navigate that?
Ooh, that's definitely a tough one. Because if somebody is, first of all, I would say you'd have to check yourself. You'd have to make sure that you're not just assuming that someone's being manipulative, and you're actually going through that kind of thing that we were just talking about, that you're actually not offended with them. Because a lot of times we can feel that people are manipulating us, but really they're actually just, once again, trying to get heard. And it may seem like manipulation, but it might not be. However, if you reach a point that someone is actually being manipulative, I would say that is probably not a healthy relationship to kind of be around. And I know that might be a tough thing if that's a family member or a close friend.
And I think it's just in that situation, you kind of figure out, like, hey, you need to completely, like you said, check yourself. Make sure that you are clear of offenses or clear of things on your end. And then just not giving power into that relationship. Not allowing, like, hey, if that person is trying to manipulate you, trying to make you feel bad for not doing something or doing something, and they're constantly doing this, is just to not give them way inside of your life. Just be like, hey, look, I love you. I appreciate you. I'm always going to be here. But I'm going to kind of distance myself in this season. It's smart. It's like, and then pray for that person. Like, that is the biggest part. I know my dad, he talks about in Beta Satan, and he talks about praying for a guy who once offended him. And he said, in the beginning, it was something that was just so hard. It was like, oh yeah, pray, like, if you can, bless them, God kind of thing.
Yeah.
And my dad had to build that spiritual muscle. And so the thing is that as you continue to keep praying for those that you're in conflict with and that you're trying to navigate.
Yeah, because actually within that, I mean, if you realize, so this story that our father actually was talking about, he wasn't the one that was being manipulative.
Yeah.
However, his whole story isn't even about this other guy that was trying to manipulate him. It was all about him. And it was all about him checking himself and realizing that he was offended because he was legitimately wronged. And so even though you've been legitimately wronged, it sometimes doesn't really matter. You have to really watch yourself and make sure that you're still loving that person, because above all, we're called to love somebody. We're not called to figure out if someone's manipulating you. We're not called to figure out, hey, who's taking advantage of other people. No, you're supposed to love other people.
Yep.
And if someone's being manipulative, yeah, of course, you're going to have to really watch yourself to make sure you're not offended so you can fully love that person.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah. And I mean, I think what Arden said, praying for people is the biggest thing. It's the only way you can actually shift what is inside somebody. And
what's inside of you.
Yeah. And I would say I've gone through situations where, and I sought counsel. I talked to John, I talked to Lisa and Arden. I was like, what do I do? Like, I want to fix this so bad, but it doesn't feel healthy. And they just had to encourage me that there's physically nothing you can do in this instance besides praying, besides doing your part. Anything, even if it's with a good intention, if you're trying to go above and beyond because you want to fix it, that need to fix is not our innate ability. So what we can do is position ourselves to know that person, for that person to know that we are there for them, that we care for them, pray into the situation. And I feel like when the timing is right, when they are ready, if it truly is manipulative, then it will come to pass. We seek forgiveness in situations like that. We can't always force reconciliation until it's the right time.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, awesome. Well, I mean, is there any final thoughts that you guys want to share with everyone, kind of as we're thinking about navigating conflict?
Yeah, sure. I would just say assume positive intent. That's been something that we've been saying basically this whole time. At the Apple store, you had people that would come in who were customers, of course, who were trying to get a problem fixed. But at the same time, as a manager, you'd have to deal with employees and you'd have to deal with issues that were happening. And I found a lot of times with employees and with customers, if you assume positive intent before anything, so even though something may look blatant, that somebody did something completely wrong, that they weren't even thinking of you whenever they were doing this, and their actions caused this to happen, and they really hurt you. Nope, you can't think that route. You need to approach that person. You need to definitely talk to that person. You need to handle this conflict. But before you go to that person, definitely assume positive intent. That, hey, so-and-so maybe did that because their a kid's life was on the line, or you can make up some crazy excuse in your mind of just assuming positive intent of somebody. But I just always say assume positive intent before you ever deal with any conflict.
Yeah. That's good. And I think if you get to that stage, you can bicep a lot of kind of the downward spiral that comes to that, because I've seen, in my own life and others' relationships as well, if we start to assume negative intent, then we're likely to kind of not go to them directly. We're likely to go kind of gossip about it, think what we want, and actually build the situation in our mind where it started minute and we've built it to be larger than it actually is. And the verse that I think of, and we cannot underestimate, even though we might have heard it, is, I believe it's Matthew 18:15 through 18. And it's all about going to your brother and addressing any conflict with them one-on-one. Yeah. So you don't leave room for speculation, for gossip. You go and you're like, hey, I'm here just because of this. I'm being vulnerable with you. I'm trusting that positive intent. And I want to work on this with you. Yeah.
And that's a really good progression, is that as the Bible talks about, you go to your brother, you always assume positive intent. And if that doesn't work, then it says go to spiritual oversights and bring them in. But you do not go and gossip about the other person. That is not the way to do it. Well, guys, thank you so much for being on. We got a couple minutes, maybe about a minute. And so the next podcast that we're actually going to be doing is all on spiritual transformation. So what does spiritual transformation mean to you guys? Christian, Alec?
Yeah. That's how you handle conflict. You just push it off to someone else. No, I'm joking.
Let's talk this out right now, Alec. Why don't you push it back? Oh, goodness. Spiritual transformation means so much to me.
It's being a butterfly, basically.
It's being a butterfly. I started as a caterpillar. I cocooned. Spiritual transformation, I think, in the most simplistic but also the most productive way is just continually daily to step into a higher way of being. I think of where I started on my Christian journey to where I am, to where I'm going. Sometimes I don't like to look back because I'm like, oh gosh, wow, that was not a great part of my life. But every time I look back, I think, wow, God, you brought me so far. Yeah. And if I just continue to walk with you and continue to make steps towards you, I will never be led astray. So. Yeah.
That's good. Awesome.
Yeah. No, we're probably almost out of time. So,
we are. We are. Well, guys, we appreciate you tuning in. If you guys enjoy our conversations, please make sure that you like and subscribe to our channel. Also, we love hearing from you guys. So please make sure that you leave a comment so that way we can respond back to you and actually cover topics that you guys want to hear about. Also, we want to make sure that, again, if you have not gotten the opportunity to become a Sons and Daughters Ambassador, that you go to our website and you sign up. We would love to have you a part of the team. We are so excited that you guys are with us, joining us. We are actually going to be doing this every 2 weeks, so we will see you guys again soon.